Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Gizmo Joe. Today we're going to be taking a look at a old desktop computer. I'm actually at my parents' house right now in Connecticut, and basically this is their old sort of family PC. As you can see, they left all the stickers on it and everything, but essentially what we're looking at here is an HP Pavilion M8 407 PC. And as you can see on the side here, it gives us some information as to what's actually inside this giant box. So basically, we've got an Intel Core 2 quad processor. That's the Q6600. It says 4 gigabytes of memory, but there's actually 8 gigabytes in here. And it says that there's a 720 gigabyte hard drive. There's actually 2 hard drives in here that are about 350 apiece. So just looking at the case, obviously it's beat up, but that's to be expected. This thing is probably a good, I don't know, 12, 13, maybe even 14 years old. And as you can see on the front, it's got a DVD burner. It's got a sort of 15 card reader up at, or a 15-in-1 sort of, flash memory. And if we look in here, we've got some I/O stuff on the front. We've obviously got the power button. We've also got a graphics card in here, but it's an NVIDIA, I think. Let's take a look at that sticker again, because I think it tells us. Yeah, so it's an NVIDIA 8500 GT. I'm pretty sure that's going to be like a 256 megabyte graphics card. So, I mean, we're not going to be doing any sort of gaming in here. But, this processor is still pretty powerful. The Core 2 quads were designed to essentially be quote-unquote future-proof. Now, I know that there's no such thing, but, they are pretty powerful, pretty capable. So this machine initially shipped with Windows Vista, but it's actually running Windows 10 now, and it actually runs pretty well. I want to open it up, clean it out, and basically put some new thermal paste, see if we can overclock the processor and stuff like that. Anyway, let's take a look at some of the tools that I'm going to use to do that. Okay, so the first thing that we needed was some isopropyl alcohol. This is how I'm going to clean sort of the fans, get rid of all the dust that's probably caked on the inside of this machine. I'm also going to take the CPU fan off, basically use the isopropyl alcohol to clean the top of the CPU, and then put some new thermal paste on here. Just a couple things about isopropyl alcohol. The reason why you can use isopropyl alcohol on electronics is because it dries really, really fast. And, it's ideal because, it's not going to tarnish anything. It's not like it's water, so it's not going to corrode anything or whatever. But the key is you got to make sure that you have over 90% isopropyl alcohol. 99%, if you read online, is probably the sort of one that you want to go for, but it can be really hard to find because it's essentially medical grade or something like that. But Walgreens in America has 91% isopropyl alcohol sitting on the shelf. I think this bottle, which is 16 fluid ounces, or 470 mils, you're looking at, I think it was about $2. Obviously there's some tax involved there, but it's super cheap. And basically what you want to do is you want to use one of these guys, and this is essentially a lint-free microfiber cloth. You can get these pretty much anywhere. I know Costco has a giant thing of them. You can get like 36 in a package, because I know that because that's where this came from. But essentially you put some isopropyl alcohol on here and you can clean the fans or whatever you're going to do. Now, sometimes the microfiber cloth is a bit cumbersome to get into those small areas, so that's why I also use some Q-tips. So obviously Q-tips, I don't put these in my ear. I don't even know why my parents have these, but it even shows you on the back here that you can use Q-tips to clean electronics. So that's what I'm going to do. Just get some isopropyl alcohol on the tip of this Q-tip and get in there some of the hard to reach places and just see if I can clean it up. Now, the other thing that a lot of people use when they are cleaning out their computer is compressed air. I don't have any, but I'm hoping that I don't really need to use it because, like I said, I'm just going to essentially clean the CPU. Now, here's my thermal paste. So for those of you who don't know, basically thermal paste sits sort of on your CPU, as you can see just on the front here, and then the fan goes on top of it. And basically what it does is it helps sort of pull the heat away, and so that it keeps the CPU relatively cool. I got this from Best Buy for $8. So this is Corsair XTM50. This is their high performance thermal paste kit. It was pretty cheap. I think on Amazon it was like $15, so Best Buy had it actually cheaper. It was on sale. But this stuff is, so your high performance stuff, you know, I don't know, thermal paste is thermal paste in my opinion. I don't really do a lot of overclocking or anything like that, so I don't really know the difference between, you know, say a high performance or a regular performance. I don't know. I mean, some people I'm sure will tell you that one's better than the other, but for my purposes, I don't really have an issue with it. And then one last thing that I picked up that I'm going to try to put into this computer over here is this solid state drive. So as you can see here, it's just a PNY. It's 120 gigabytes, and it's just a 2.5-inch SATA drive. I opted for the 120 gig because basically what I'm going to do is essentially use this as my boot drive. So as I mentioned before, my parents' old PC there has essentially two hard drives in there. There's one that essentially is a boot drive, and then there's another one that's storage. And I think they're both about 330, 350 a piece. I had a look, and the one that acts as a boot drive is only about 90 gigabytes, and I'm going to try to see if I can clean it up and maybe even shrink that a little bit further. But the 90 gigabytes will be able to clone onto this 120, and then I'll be able to use this essentially as a boot drive. I'm going to leave the other two hard drives in there and basically just use them both as storage and see how we go. But like I said, you know, I fired up the old PC not long ago, and, you know, it runs Windows 10 okay. So I'm hoping that once I, you know, make all of these fixes and cleans, it will run even better. Anyway, let's take a look and open up the case. Okay, so what I really like about this case is that basically you don't even really need tools. You basically have these giant screws in the back that you can easily grab with your fingers, and you can just sort of unscrew this. Having a bit of a hard time, but you get the idea. And then just pull this whole side panel off. So I'll do that. Okay, so we've got the side panel off. And like I said, this computer is about 14 years old. And look at all the dust in there. I don't think this thing has ever been opened up. I mean, there are literally dust bunnies living inside of this thing. Maybe a mistake not to get some compressed air. I'm going to see if one of their vacuums has like a reverse function, so I can just blow the whole thing out. Because if I try to clean this with just using isopropyl alcohol, a microfiber cloth, and some Q-tips, it's probably going to take me forever. But yeah, it's a bit of a mess. Cable management, not the best. So the HP guys, whoever put this together, you know, probably could have done better. But let's be honest, most people who probably bought this machine probably didn't have any intention to open it. And like I said, this is probably the first time it's ever been opened. So I've definitely got my work cut out for me. And yeah, let's get started. Okay, so as you can see, here's some of my progress. The dust isn't completely gone, but I've tried to get in there with the microfiber cloth and some Q-tips and some isopropyl alcohol and just sort of try to clean everything as best I can. You know, it is a tight fit in here. I really don't want to take this entire motherboard out and have to clean each individual thing. As you can see, I still need to hit some of these cords up. They're very, very dusty. Obviously, you know, that can affect performance because you get thermal throttling because you know, it's just too much heat buildup, and so the computer says to itself, well, we need to essentially cool down, so let's pare down the performance. It's also, you know, a fire hazard. You want to make sure that, you know, you don't have dust bunnies or whatever living in this thing, because, you know, it could cause a spark or whatever. So as you can see, there's some dust that I still need to get out. There's that one hiding there, and yeah, so I've just been using, as you can see here, you know, Q-tips, essentially doused with a little bit of the isopropyl alcohol, as well as this microfiber cloth to try to get some of the, you know, the bigger parts in one go. But it is tedious because you're essentially using these little Q-tips to essentially kind of clean everything. But what I'm going to do next is I am going to essentially take this fan off, because this fan is our CPU fan. So I'm going to essentially get these screws out here, lift this entire fan off, and then I am going to clean the CPU. The thermal paste is probably super old. It's probably non-existent. It's like rock hard, I'm sure. And we'll put some new thermal paste on there. So that's what I'm going to do next. Okay, so we've removed the CPU fan, and if I flick it over here, you can see obviously it's caked with dust, but there's your thermal paste, totally dry. Not good, and obviously I need to give this thing a really good clean with my isopropyl alcohol. Let's just take a look inside the machine And there's your CPU, and that's that Core 2 quad, which again is, you know, a fairly capable chip. Like I said, I was using this computer. It runs Windows 10, you know, just basic programs, web browsing, you know, some light Excel, Word stuff, and it's totally fine. So I mean, this is a capable machine for somebody who just needs something very basic. But you can see that definitely needs new thermal paste. There's tons of dust all over this thing, so I'm going to have to get in here and essentially hit it with my Q-tips and my microfiber cloth. And stay tuned. I'll do that now. Okay, so we cleaned out the CPU fan. You know, just hit it basically with the isopropyl alcohol with a microfiber cloth. Started with the Q-tip, kind of went in between all the different fan blades, you know, and just got all that nasty old thermal paste off of it. So, you know, I'm not going to sit here and get every little bit of dust off of it because, you know, again, it's a 14-year-old computer. It's just going to be essentially a backup. But, you know, I think it cleaned up pretty well. And I also hit the CPU itself. You can see I still got a little bit of thermal paste I need to get rid of. There's some little dots here and there. But basically what I did was take a Q-tip and just soak the tip of it with some isopropyl alcohol and basically just rubbed it all away. You can see over here that's sort of you know, the aftermath of everything that I've been hitting it with. And like I said, I used the microfiber cloth on some of the larger areas to essentially try to clean it up. But I am happy with the progress so far. Like I said, I don't have any compressed air. I don't feel like running out to go grab some. And so basically I'm just going to try to do as much of this by hand as possible. And then, you know, just hopefully, you know, replace the thermal paste and, you know, fire it up, see how it goes. But anyway, I'm going to get back to dusting. Okay, everybody, it looks pretty good in here. Like I said, I'm not going to get every bit of dust out of here, but it's looking a heck of a lot better than it did. Again, just hit everything up with either a Q-tip or a microfiber cloth with that isopropyl alcohol. The CPU is looking really clean, and so now we're ready to essentially apply some new thermal paste and then reinstall the fan. So if we just kind of come over here, like I said, I've got the Corsair XTM50. Now this kit, this is a 5-gram thermal paste syringe. It comes with a applicator, like this little plasticky card thing. Probably not going to use that. The instructions are quite thick for thermal paste. It also comes with this applicator thingy-majig, which I don't think I'm going to use either. Basically, a lot of people get whacked out about thermal paste, but in my experience, all you do is you get basically this guy, put it right in the center of your CPU. So if we come back over to the computer here, put a tiny dollop about the size of a pea and then just let it sit there. Some people like to spread it out or whatever, but I find that, you know, when you essentially place your fan back on top of the CPU, what it does is it pushes all of the thermal paste to all around your CPU. Worst thing you want to do is put too much, because then it starts to bleed out into this other stuff and it can cause lots of problems. So like I said, just about the size of a small pea, just in the middle there, pop your CPU fan on top of it, screw it down tight, and you'll be good to go. So that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, so we've got our CPU fan installed back on top of the CPU. Like I said, I just put a small pea-sized dollop of thermal paste just on the center of the CPU, and then basically just sat the CPU fan right on top of it and then screwed it down, and essentially making contact with that thermal paste will spread it out across the whole CPU. Like I said, that's how I've always sort of done thermal paste in the past. Never had any issues. So, but I mean, you know, there's a variety of different ways to do it. Anyway, what I'm going to do next is I am going to take this solid state drive and install it. Now, I was having a look at the available SATA cables that I have, and all of them are being used at the moment. So what I think I'm going to do is the CD DVD burner is up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect this, and then I'm going to essentially put the solid state drive in there, and I'm going to try to essentially slide it just right into this unused bay here, which probably was like an old, you know, for another disk drive or floppy drive or whatever, but it's obviously not being used. And I'm just going to use some double-sided tape just to stick it down in there because I don't have a bracket. I don't feel like buying one. And I think it will be fine. It will just sit there. But essentially that's what we're going to do.